Here's an instructional video for working with the basic forms with value for my Art 1. Hey guys, let's talk about how to sketch out your 5 basic forms. So I asked you all to create one that's emphasized. Now I chose the sphere, but you can choose any basic form that you want. I just used a lid from a container and trace that. So be creative in just kind of looking around your house or around the classroom for things that are round. Just remember to sanitize after you use it. I have a ruler, so I'm going to go ahead and start mapping out the other forms. I asked you all to create a cube. And I said about 1 to 2 inches just to make sure these aren't too small. So kind of looking at this now, probably more on the 2 inches in size. So I have a lot of questions about how to make a square turn into a cube. So I just drew my square, and then each of these corners here, I'm going to have the side lines kind of going in the same direction, like it's pointing off to something in the distance. Now to get my endpoint for my cube, if I line up my ruler with this edge and just pull it back, keeping it parallel to this line, and then I can just erase a little bit extra there. And then same thing with this edge, lining up my ruler, pulling it back. As soon as it touches this corner, I know that's as far back as it can go. Then I have a cube, and you can just erase the lines you don't need. Okay, so cube. Cone is another one that I asked you to include. The cone is very similar to a triangle, except instead of using a straight line for the bottom like you normally would with a triangle, you just curve it. And that creates the illusion that it's rounded like a cone. A cylinder, you're going to need an ellipse. So it's kind of like an oval, but you're really looking at a circle that's, you know, looking at it from an angle. So I drew kind of this oval here, an ellipse. You bring down the sides, like a marshmallow. Brought down the sides, and then you round the bottom the same angle that you had at the top. By curving this, it creates the illusion that it's round. And last but not least, a pyramid. Let's see, maybe I can add that down here. So usually with the pyramid, I start with a triangle shape, and then I have this point out to the distance and then connect it with the corner. That just gives you a basic pyramid. What's going to make them look more three-dimensional is adding the value. So that's the next step. All right, so let's talk about some of the techniques that I did while I was drawing. Hopefully this helped. I turned off an overhead light that I had, hoping that you could see the values a little bit. Let's see what it looks like with it back on. Kind of turning that down a little bit and then completely off. So just to talk a little bit about the techniques, you don't actually have to label these with the number pencils that you're using. I just did that so that you all could see what pencil number I was using as I was working. You don't actually have to put a light source where I drew kind of like a little sun or a light in the corner. You can do that if it helps remind you where the light is coming from, and then erase it later when you're all finished. As I was blending, I try and be really soft with the pencils as I'm applying the values. Sometimes I work in a little bit of a crosshatch technique to help it blend, but I try not to scratch into the paper, but kind of use it from the side. I did sharpen up my edges a little bit with one of my darker pencils, and it's not that things are outlined in life. You know, objects around us are not actually outlined, but we're seeing those edges because of the value applied. So drawing this kind of like there's a tone behind it, even though we're working on white. So, but I wanted to create kind of like a crisp edge, a sharpened edge. So that's why I outlined it just a little bit. Don't forget, I included the 5 elements of shading. So we have the highlight, midtone, shadow edge, cast shadow, reflective light. Those are all components that you need for something to have that illusion of 3-dimension. And as you can see, each of these just kind of thinking about where the light is and how it's going to wrap around the object. So as this cone shape fades around, the light fades around, it's getting darker and darker, and it casts a shadow kind of similar to the shape of the form. Each surface is going to have a different value of light. So you can see here on my cylinder, the top is having a little bit less light, and this is treated completely different because it's a different side. And it's rounded, so we're seeing more of a gradual blend versus something like a cube where the edges are sharp. So there's a big change in value as soon as it goes from one side to the next. So you can leave those edges in there versus more of something like a gradual blend. All right, I look forward to seeing how you all do. And don't forget, we're going to submit these to a Google slide that I've provided for you all.